The city has been rising and falling for centuries. Castle town in the age of lords, industrial port under smokestacks, military hub threaded with rails and depots. Wooden quarters have given way to concrete blocks. Tram lines have cut through old lanes, and the delta has been steadily filled and straightened. Now it is early on a Monday in high summer, August 6, 1945, and the light over Hiroshima is thin and almost colorless as the sun clears the hills. The air is still. The city is between breaths. If this kind of reconstruction works for you, suggest the next city in the comments. The castle stands first in the frame, low and dark against the brightening sky, its layered roofs stepping upward from a stone base surrounded by a quiet moat. The water is flat, only a faint ring where an insect touches the surface, and the reflection of the keep wavers slightly. Timber beams inside the walls hold the weight of centuries, but from outside it reads as clean geometry. Verticals of posts, horizontals of eaves, a silhouette that once signaled authority over rice fields and river traffic. Around the moat, a few figures move along the paths, small against the mass of stone and wood, their footsteps absorbed by packed earth and summer grass. Here at the heart of the city, the government district spreads out in rectangular blocks, a grid of streets converging on a domed exhibition hall near the river junction. The dome's metal ribs catch the early light, a pale curve above masonry walls that have already seen one war and an earthquake. Nearby offices and public buildings are mostly low-rise, their concrete and brick facades broken by rows of windows and bands of darker trim. On the street level, awnings and simple shop fronts form a continuous line. Any signage is just bands of darker and lighter shapes, lettering reduced to pattern and contrast. Electric lines cross overhead in dense bundles, humming faintly, while a few bicycles and pedestrians mark the scale of the avenues. Across the tramway, commercial streets tighten into a busier weave of narrow lanes and shop fronts. Wooden two-story buildings lean close to one another, upper floors jutting slightly over the walkways, roofs tiled in repeating dark scales. Sliding shutters are half open, letting out thin bands of sound and the smell of morning cooking, rice steam, miso, a trace of charcoal. The tram itself glides through the scene on metal rails set into the street, its body painted in muted tones, windows reflecting sky and cables. Its movement is steady, routine, the squeak of wheels on curves, already part of the city's background rhythm. On this street, near the main station, the railway defines the horizon. Long platforms under simple canopies, steel tracks running in parallel lines that narrow toward the distance. A locomotive idles somewhere out of sight, the low chuff of steam and a faint metallic clatter drifting over the neighborhood. The station building is solid but not grand, a practical node for troops, workers, and goods. Freight cars sit on sidings, boxy and dull, while a few human figures cross the open forecourt, dwarfed by the scale of the rail yard. Beyond, telegraph poles march away in straight ranks, carrying wires that tie Hiroshima to other cities and other decisions. At the edge of the delta, the rivers set the geometry of everything. Several channels divide and rejoin, braiding through the urban core, their surfaces catching the sun in long, broken streaks. Bridges span them at regular intervals, some in steel truss, some in simple concrete arches, each one a fixed line over moving water. On the banks, stone embankments and low retaining walls hold back the current, while wooden houses and small warehouses press close to the edge. Boats sit moored along the shore, flat-bottomed barges, small fishing craft, rocking gently in the barely perceptible flow. The city's grid has been forced to bend around these waterways, but the overall
Hiroshima
impression
in the
from
summer of
above is of
1945.
order imposed on a
bustling,
shifting
peaceful
landscape.
city intersected by waterways.
The military installations sit more quietly in the frame than their importance suggests. Barracks complexes with their long, low buildings and parade grounds lie just beyond the densest commercial areas, their layouts rigid and rectangular. Training fields are open rectangles of dust and trampled grass, bordered by simple fences and a few scattered trees. Nearby, warehouses and depots cluster along rail spurs and wider roads, their roofs forming broad, dark plains. Up to this point, Hiroshima's role as a regional military center has been expressed mostly in logistics and administration, in the steady movement of uniforms and supplies through these spaces, rather than in visible spectacle. Across the residential districts, the texture of the city changes again, becoming lighter and more fragile. Wooden houses with tiled or shingled roofs crowd along narrow lanes, separated by thin walls and small gardens. Many structures are built in traditional style, post and beam frames, sliding doors and paper screens, while newer ones mix in plaster and brick. Laundry hangs from second-story balconies, barely stirring in the still air. The morning sun glances off roof lines, picking out the repeating angles of gables and eaves. It is a dense fabric of timber and paper, a pattern of combustible surfaces laid out in continuous rows. The industrial zones on the outskirts add another layer, low factories and workshops with sawtooth roofs, chimneys sending up thin columns of smoke that drift almost straight in the calm air. Machine shops, small arms plants, and other wartime facilities occupy these blocks, their interiors filled with metal, oil, and heat. Outside, stacks of crates and raw materials sit in orderly piles, while narrow-gauge tracks and simple cranes hint at the movement of heavy loads. The soundscape here is a muted clank and whir, softened by distance, but constant enough to mark the area as a place of production. It is a city whose materials and layout make it vulnerable to forces no one inside can yet see. From here on, the ordinary details of this morning, tram schedules, office hours, household routines, will be fixed in memory, not for what they are, but for the moment they are interrupted. Within minutes, an aircraft high above the city will release a single device, and the geometry of streets, rivers, and districts described so far will be subjected to an energy release without precedent in urban history. The bridges that now tie the delta together will be reference points in aerial photographs. The dome that now catches the sun will later stand as a skeletal outline against an altered skyline. The distinction between military and civilian zones, so clear on maps, will be blurred by the radius of impact. Here in the aftermath that historians will reconstruct, Hiroshima's morning of August 6th becomes a hinge between eras. The city that has grown through feudal, imperial, and industrial phases will be forced into another transformation, one that will eventually involve rebuilding in concrete and steel, new bridges, new tram lines, and memorial spaces aligned with the river. The castle grounds will be restored, the exhibition hall's dome preserved as a landmark of absence, and the delta's channels will again reflect lights from rebuilt streets. Yet the specific arrangement of timber houses, shop fronts, rails, and riverbanks seen on this morning will not return in the same form. At the edge of the archival record, the image of Hiroshima just before the blast remains, a layered city of stone, wood, water, and wire, caught in the ordinary heat of a summer morning. Its systems, transport, administration, industry, and domestic life are all in motion but unremarkable, part of a pattern repeated in many cities across the world at war. The camera, real or imagined, holds on the quiet grid, the slow trams, the still rivers, and the dome above the junction. This is one moment in a longer archive of cities shaped by time.